Hi everybody, Adam Steele here, and today I'm going to talk about why you might pay as much as a used car for a set of headphones. So this video is brought to you in collaboration with Odyssey. They're not paying me to say anything, so opinions are all my own. However, they did send the MM500 headphones over for me to evaluate and demonstrate. I'm not going to use the word review because it feels a little biased. Anyway, on with the show. Because a lot of us have to do our work on headphones for a number of reasons. I have been working on headphones, despite what you might see here, for 15 years or more most of the time. Originally it was because I was working for a media company in an office with a lot of other people who were either my senior or I was in command of a team, and so I needed to be in close proximity without irritating them with hundreds of watts of volume blasting out. This studio is right underneath where the office was, but I had to be in the office most of the time. I learned to basically mix on open back headphones and found that whilst there are differences between working on headphones and working on monitors, it can be adapted to. You just have to be fully aware of those differences. Now, no speaker is perfect, and that includes headphones. There are always limitations. With headphones, because they're so close to your ear, they have to kind of adapt to your ear canals, the shape of your head, all that kind of stuff, and that is different for every person. So what you hear and what somebody else hears from exactly the same pair of headphones might be quite different. This seems to be more of a pronounced effect with in-ears, because once they go in your ear, the shape of your ear and the pressure and the size and all that kind of stuff has a very big bearing. So one of the reasons that a lot of guys who mix or do a lot of work on big headphones, the reason that we do that is because it's further outside the ear, so it's got less influence based on our hearing or how we're feeling on a given day or a number of factors. Traditional speaker headphone drivers, though, have limitations because they have to move. They're a moving coil. And that's something that has to sit just outside of your ear and move backwards and forwards and try and move the whole thing perfectly to try and reproduce sound as best as possible. But that's really difficult to do accurately, which is why the costs start to go up with headphones. I mean, aside from your longevity and durability and toughness, if you're going to be using these for a long time, which is the other part of cost. Now, Odyssey have come along. I mean, there were a few other companies that did this kind of thing in the 70s and the 80s, but it was seen as a very kind of audiophile, weird thing to do. But they've come along and made these things called planar magnetic headphones. And it's a very different design to what you'll see on traditional headphones. Traditional headphones are generally, it's a speaker in the traditional way where it's a voice coil, which is something like copper wound around a magnet. And then as you give that voltage, it pushes that little magnet and voice coil around, so the voice coil moves and the magnet doesn't, and that's attached to a piece of usually paper or some more modern material, and that's trying to move everything and makes a speaker. There are limitations to that which can be overcome, but one of the solutions is a completely different method. The planar magnetics that Odyssey make are basically a big kind of sheet of metal. I'm reducing this right down to the most simple that I can try and explain it. And the entire thing moves all at once. Now, there are upsides and downsides, but Odyssey seems to have come a long way in producing something that can really do what's advertised. And so these are their MM500s, because there are now the 100s as well, and I'll talk about them later. These things cost £1,700, so probably about the same in dollars plus sales tax. That's a lot. And that immediately puts these out of the price range of what a lot of people can afford. However, this is where a larger discussion, I think, even before I talk about the headphones at all, comes in about what are we prepared to spend on what we do. Are you somebody who just tinkers around in their bedroom and maybe does, a little bit of recording once or twice a week? These are not aimed at you. And I think that's perfectly fine, because there are other options that are much more affordable, like the MM100s that Odyssey make, which are more like $400 rather than $1,700, which is still a lot of money. But this now comes to the question, how serious are you about what you do? For me, $1,700 or £1,700 is an expense that I could reach to. I thought about getting these for quite a while, and I probably should have pulled the trigger earlier. As it turns out, I'm working with Odyssey to make a video like this, but I was going to buy them anyway. And that's because I now, having talked about working in an office, I now work at home a lot when my daughter's in bed. She might go to bed at 7 p.m, 8 p.m. She's getting a little older, maybe 8:30 p.m. But I like to work at night. I might work till 11 p.m. or 12 p.m. and I can't use speakers of any kind because, the walls in my house, they're not that thick, and definitely don't want to be waking people up, no matter how good those monitor speakers would be. So, to get meaningful work done, because I work in mixing, I work in video production where the sound has to be pristine. I work in making sure the sound is as good as it can be and translate everywhere. I need headphones that don't lie to me. I need headphones that are so accurate that I can take this recording or mix or whatever I've done to somewhere else and it will translate as if I had been working on monitor speakers. Now, I know they will never be the same thing, but I know that. I work with these, and what I will do 90% of the time is I will get probably one of the best mixes of my life at home in the studio where I've got quiet time to think and process everything on headphones, bring it in here, check on the reference speakers, and there's very, very little that needs changing. There's very rarely ever a complete redo. Now, that in itself makes these worth it for me because I get paid to make things right. I get paid to do a good job. And if I'm not doing a good job, I don't get the second call. So this is kind of, if I was to get these on, a finance plan or something like that, how much do you think these speakers cost? How much do you think the room acoustic treatment in here cost? How much do you think the sound isolation in here cost? This is a studio, this is a business, but this is what I do. And if what you do is work with sound and you're serious, but you can't make sound very often, it might be worth pouring more of your money into a headphone solution and then less into the speaker solution. Which is why, I've just put out that video about the Kali UNFs, which I now have in my mix room at home. Those are great, but I can't use them, like I said, beyond a certain time of day. And the low-end extension on those isn't super low. The high-end isn't crystal clear on them. They are great to have speakers in the room, which can be really useful to me. But they're not 10 hertz to a silly number of kilohertz, and super accurate on transients. Transients are worth talking about because they're the same reason that I just moved back to mixing on good old NS10s. And yes, I know those are SN10 copy clones. These are real NS10s. There's a video coming on that pretty soon. The transient is the first tch, it's the tap of a hi-hat, it's the hit of a snare, it's the of a kick. It's the bit that makes an instrument defined, and poor quality headphones don't reproduce that. Same with poor quality monitors or a badly treated room. One of the first things that you get is transients to be smeared, is what we say. So that you can't tell whether a snare or a kick or something is loud enough in context of everything else. Even if the frequency response, if you measure a room, looks fairly flat. If you hear a snare hit and it goes bang out of a speaker and then echoes around the room, you might feel like that's way louder than it actually is. That's a common reason why a lot of people will use an extra speaker, like that kind of the grot box, the Oratone kind of thing back there. That's why a lot of guys will have something like that, because it takes a lot of the energy out of the room so the transient can be heard. If your headphones that you work on are capable of really accurately reproducing that transient, you'll know much more quickly whether that snare's too loud in the mix or not. And you're not then going hunting for the frequencies or whether the compressor's set right or that kind of thing. You'll just know. And when you know something's right or it's not right, that's 50% of mixing. The other 50%, of course, being what do we do when we know it's not right? But it comes back to the old circular argument of you can't mix what you can't hear. That's equally valid on a monitoring system as a headphone system. Now, let's talk about these a little more for a minute, because why are they so expensive? Well, they're hand-built in America with some really specific parts, and they've got these kind of really, clicky adjustable bits that make it look like I've got antennas on my head, like I'm kind of signaling in Aliens. I kind of like that, but it's not that. But that's not the sole reason why they cost a lot of money. They are built to last. I can barely see any plastic on here at all. There's a bit of covering plastic on the left and rights, but that's underneath as a cover, and that looks like it's not a load-bearing part. It's all sprung metal, and everything on here looks like I could throw these to somebody across the room. They miss them, and no damage. It's a proper leather top. It's designed to be comfortable but not break. And again, I'm probably going to sound biased because I got sent these. Do be aware of that. But in terms of build quality, that's a part of the reason why they're expensive. They come with a case that is, again, you could play football with this thing, which means that I can take my headphones wherever I'm going if I'm working on headphones in the field, which happens to me quite a lot, especially with the video work that I do. I might have to make a mix tweak or sort out the audio for something while I'm away from the studio very often. And if I can rely on a setup, even if it's not my monitor setup, which obviously I can't take to a location shoot with me, that's worth a lot to me. Comes with a decent cable with mini XLR connectors that click in, so if this does eventually break, you can get another one, which I've always liked headphones with removable connections. At any price point, I think it's a really good idea that if one piece of cable breaks, you're not suddenly throwing the whole thing away. But beyond that, I think what you're paying for is the kind of the exact kind of technology that's used, because it comes with, I don't know if you can see it on the B-roll here, the planar magnetic stuff. It looks like 1,000 razor blades behind the strips there. You can just catch that in the right light. And that has to be delicate enough to respond super fast, but also tough enough that if I drop these once, I'm not sending them back to Odyssey and going, please fix them, and then having a repair bill. For years, and this is where I go off script a little bit, not that there was a script to begin with. For years, I used Sennheiser's HD650s to mix with, because that's what everyone told me I should mix with. And they were decent. But the limitations that I found with those over the years kind of came back to bite me sometimes. The high end on those headphones is particularly dark, which means they're not fatiguing, but it also means that I would sometimes get things sent back to me with like, there's a really strong S in this vocal, can't you hear it? Or there's a noise going on, why can't you hear it? And actually, a couple of weeks ago, I thought I was going insane because I was getting feedback like that. And I had to send myself off to the hospital, basically, and see an ear doctor. And yes, my ears were blocked. Oops. But I then went to put the headphones back on, and the high end still wasn't there. Switched to the Odysseys, and suddenly it was like, whoa. Right, okay. So, yes, they're, yeah, the high end I am now aware of. It's not super bright on these headphones, but it's there. It's there, and it's there enough that I am very well aware when there is a problem, and that's what you want out of mixing headphones. I also tried the LCDXs, which are more like £1,100 or $1,100, which is way more affordable, and both Warren Hewitt and Christian Kohler, friends of mine, swear by that model, the LCDX. I prefer these having back-to-back to them, but it's subtle. A question for a lot of people is, would you pay that $600 upcharge for a sound that you like a little better? And for me, the answer is yes, because this is in the price range where I'm asking questions about, I'm going to use this for years and years. Do I want it to be the closest to, you know, what I want out of a set of headphones? And for me, the answer is yes. But I can see why, for, you know, someone who's not doing this for a job, that would be a deal breaker, and kind of the lower price bracket makes more sense. The other thing that I found about these headphones, and the reason that I'm not giving you any kind of practical demonstrations, is how do you demonstrate headphones on a video? It's like dancing about architecture. But the frequency response on these was almost perfect to my ears, but I'm using SonarWorks Sound ID reference wherever possible. Not because these are bad, but because I always use that, either on monitors or on headphones. Any imperfections in the room, I want to iron them out as best as possible. Even great headphones have some slight ups and downs on the graph, and I'm looking for as flat a response as I can get, with some caveats. The sub-frequencies that I found on the MM500 were not particularly big, particularly boomy. Were also not smeared, which means like there wasn't a big 100 hertz bump. There wasn't a trying to compensate for a lack of bass or anything like that. It was pretty much just accurate until it was just kind of fading off a bit. I like to have quite a full low end on headphones, but not a stuffy low end. So I found that on top of the default SonarWorks profile for the MM500s, which there is a profile for, I then added 100 hertz and down as a boost. I think I put 6 dB on it. If I'd gone up to 150 or 200 hertz, that wouldn't have sounded right. That wouldn't have sounded appropriate, because there would be a kind of stuffiness in the bass. But I found a point that did what I wanted, because now, especially the sub-low stuff, is more obvious to me in terms of its balance. I like to mix with a very slight loudness curve, and I always have done. It's surprising to me that the NS10s in here come across like they have that loudness curve, probably because of the transient response, but headphones generally don't naturally do that, whereas this room is engineered in such a way that we don't get much high frequency damping. So it works out well in the room, and these just needed that little lift. Also, I put, I think, a 3 dB boost above 6K, but again, it's a uniform 3 dB boost. Not because these don't have enough of it, but because that's something I like. I do like I said, just a slight loudness bump. So there's nothing below 6K that I'm bumping up, because that's plenty in the mid-range, and the mid-range really is the focus of a mix. What I boost the lows and highs for is personal enjoyment a little bit, but also within the confines of being accurate enough that I can mix on. So I really do have to strike a balance there between what do I like and what is flat enough. Because no headphones in the world are flat response. If they were, they'd be really unappealing. And frequency response, like I said earlier, is only half the story, and transient is the other. And the transient response on these is what makes them the killer. Every piece of work that I've done on these since I've got them has translated to other headphones and other speakers pretty much flawlessly. And that's what I would be paying the money for. So yeah, this, like I said, I'll say it again. These have been sent to me to demonstrate and to review, but if they hadn't been, I would have been buying them, and if at some point I have to send them back, I'm going to say no, I'm not sending these back. How much do you want? So yeah, these are now the centerpiece of my home studio setup, because that's where I feel like the most attention should be paid. I'll say it again, you can't mix what you can't hear. And with these, I can hear everything. Every embarrassing little detail in a vocal that I've done, every embarrassing misstep in a mix that I've done in the past, it's all there. And yeah, Manny Marroquina's kind of gone the extra mile to make sure that Odyssey are doing it his way, and I seem to like his way, so there you go. MM500s from Odyssey. There's a link down below. So I hope this was mildly informative for you, because this is the same question as Christian Cola's mixing on headphones video. It's something that I do a lot. I filmed this twice because I completely babbled the first time, so hopefully this makes a bit more sense. And if you were interested, because I'm a camera nerd, I actually filmed this on an iPhone, just to see what the difference was, using Filmic Pro and Vlog. So yeah, if you're interested in filming with what you have, I mean, yes, I'm using decent lights from Godox, but yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks to the patrons on Patreon. Thanks to everybody who's following, and hit the subscribe button. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.